Ready. I was talking to David back there, and John and Bob, and I'll weave the stories in as I go, in 15, 20 minutes or so, and interrupt any time for any questions. And finding balance in your life. I don't know. I was telling David that in terms of burnout, how many people feel overwhelmed, overworked, over-pushed, and you get to the syndrome of burnout, and about 40% of people in every occupation experience burnout, and physicians is about 50%. And so this is kind of about burnout and how to survive burnout in a formula. And when I have the subcaption there, a simple guide to a balanced life, last night, this is a true story, I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning thinking of what I was going to speak to you about, and some reason the book by Khalil Gibran, A Tear and a Smile, came to my mind. You remember him, he wrote The Prophet, and was kind of an iconoclastic author and artist, a Lebanese American writer from Lebanon. And A Tear and a Smile, in his poem, it implies that if you experience joy, to really experience joy, you probably have to have sadness. To experience happiness the same way. It's the opposite thing. So I'm a guy talking about a simple guide to a balanced life. You can assume that I was probably out of balance in a very significant way. And there was a physician, William Osler, who was the chairman of medicine, started the medicine department at Johns Hopkins. He said, well, preaching a doctrine of balance and equanimity, I myself am a castaway. So I would say that, but I'm going to give you a little story of how the formula to get back. But I love this quote from James Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan. The life of every man is a diary in which he means to write one story and writes another. His humblest hour is when he compares the volume as it is with what he vowed to make it. And I can tell you the story that I had in mind was absolutely nothing like the one I wrote. And I'm going to share that with you. And I mentioned burnout because this is what really, really happened to me. Emotional and physical exhaustion, intolerant, irritable, sarcastic, decreased sense of accomplishment, poor work-life balance, and you can see the numbers. So people, if not yourself, experience some of these characteristics. And it comes from this crazy society in which we live. And the pressures are so many. And but I'm going to start about what gives people's lives meaning. And I love it. It's creativity, resilience, determination, and love. And I'm going to touch on these subjects, but I'm going to start at the end of the story and then bring you back. And the end of the story really began in Hawaii. This is 3 years ago with Heinz Ward and Paula Newby Frazier. And this is in Kona, before the Kona Hawaiian Ironman Triathlon. And Heinz was paid $500,000 to do the Ironman Triathlon in Kona by Chocolate Milk. $500,000, and Paula Newby Frazier won the race 7 times. I said, Heinz, I've worked with Heinz for many years with the Steelers and helped him through some concussion problems. And I said, Heinz, maybe you could get a little something for me from Chocolate Milk as well. And they sent me a 6-pack of chocolate milk. But we both been with the Steelers for a long time, and I had been doing triathlons, and I'll tell you that story, we'll get to that, for quite a few years. And I'd done Hawaii in the past, and I went up to Heinz before the race, and he knew I had him by about 35 years. I said, Heinz, I just want you to know I'm going to kick your ass. And I did intimidate him because he knew if he went back and the trainers and the coaches said, you let Maroon beat you? But anyway, this is the Hawaiian Ironman. It's a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and then a marathon through the lava fields of Kona on the Big Island. And this is the swim start, and I'm off the screen to your left, back on the beach, waving to everybody as they go. And but it's one of the most incredible experiences one can have, and we're going to talk a little bit about spirituality as well as we move along. And with God's grace, I was able to finish 16 hours later.
Wow. Congratulations.
He beat me, and I subsequently, I mean, I've been very blessed to do about 8 Ironman triathlons, and last year I finished first in my age group in Muncie, Indiana.
Awesome.
The only question I don't want you to ask is how many were in my age group. That's I was first.
Whistler, BC.
So the question comes: what motivates somebody to do something as crazy as a 16-hour race, and the training that goes into that, I can assure you, is very rigorous. It takes a big commitment. So what motivates somebody to do? How did I, and this is the story that I want to share you, how did I start to do that? Well, when I finished my residency at Indiana University and University of Vermont and Oxford University in England, I came to the University of Pittsburgh, and things were good. I was writing papers, I was appointed chief of neurosurgery at Presby, doing all sorts of very fancy things, Steeler team doctor. You know, I was touching all the bases. I had accumulated all the amulets of success. I had position, I had some authority or power, I had pecuniary, and I was rewarded fairly well financially. We're never rewarded well enough, obviously, but I was fairly well, and I had it all. And I was doing brain surgery under local anesthesia, having patients talking to me while I took out their tumor. And within a week, my father died of a heart attack at age 60. My wife left in the middle of winter with two kids, went to Chicago where she could survive herself, and I had to quit neurosurgery. So I literally was burned out and dropped out. I could not operate. I was operating on somebody, and I got into a bleeding situation that ordinarily should be no problem, and I had to ask for help. And when I did that, I walked out of the operating room and never came back. That was a full year. So when my father died, he bequeathed to my mother this gem, the Dallas Pike truck stop in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I went one day from doing brain surgery at Presby to flipping hamburgers and filling up 18-wheelers at the Dallas Pike truck stop, trying to help my mother pay the mortgage on this over-leveraged piece of crap. And you know, I'm wondering, what's a nice guy like this doing here? I had no insight. David, you mentioned the word insight. Insight.
Right.
I did not have insight. I did not have insight. I had no idea what happened to me to get me at this point. My wife left, my father died, and yeah, these are cataclysmic events, but survivable. You don't quit your job and walk out for a year to do that. And so, you know, I'm literally filling up 18-wheelers and working a truck stop. And this is the house, a farmhouse in the middle of winter that I moved into, desolate farmhouse. And then I contracted infectious hepatitis from eating the truck stop food. Why did I contract infectious hepatitis? What was going on in my body and in my brain. What does stress do to the human brain and the human body? Well, I was releasing huge amounts of cortisol in a chronic way, which demineralizes your bone, literally destroys cells in the hippocampus of your brain that subserves memory, literally destroys cells, and gained weight. So you gain weight when you're secreting cortisol. I was 20 pounds overweight. My immune system was completely suppressed. I contracted hepatitis, which I shouldn't have had. I couldn't sleep, anxiety, depression. I had all of that, and I now see why, and this is all described in the book. I see why it happened. At least I see what was happening to my body and my brain. I still didn't get it, so to speak. And while I was recovering from hepatitis in that farmhouse in the middle of winter, I picked up this little book by William Danforth entitled I Dare You. Danforth founded the Ralston Purina Company back in the 1910s, 1920s. And this was an award book. It was an award, the Danforth Award, which I won as a high school senior for leadership, someone who has leadership qualities. I read it, I skimmed through it at the time, but I never read it. I didn't really read it and digest it. And I'm lying in the farmhouse, and this is a true story, ladies and gentlemen. I picked up this book, I Dare You, and what he says, he said, I dare you to live a balanced life. And this is what I mean by a balanced life. And he said, I want you to look at this square. Work, relationships, spirituality, and physical. Now, reader, I want you to draw a line equivalent to the time and effort you spend on each side of your square. Think in your own minds, each one of you right now. Think, my work, my relationships, my spirituality, my physical. Which of these is a trophy?
I'm feeling stressed all of a sudden.
Honestly, this is the essence of the book. It's the essence of my life. And it was just such a revelation to me. So here's my square when I was in that farmhouse. I realized, and this is cheating, it was all work. There was no relationship. There was no spirituality. There was no physical activity at all. I was overweight and terrible. And I had no insight into what I was doing and how this happened. I let myself go completely. I let go of my family. I let go of spirituality. I let go of the physical side of my life. And it was a flatline EKG. It was all work. And so how did I get out of it? What happened? Well, the banker who owned the mortgage to the truck stop called me one day and said, Joe, let's go for a run. I said, run? I can't walk. And I think he wanted to see if I was going to be able to pay the mortgage and be around long enough. But I found an old pair of sneakers and some sweatpants or scrubs. We went down to this track in Wheeling, West Virginia, the Triadelphia High School track, and I made it around 4 times. I think it took me a half an hour. And I was exhausted. I said, never again. That's it. I went home. That night was the first night I slept in 4 months. A little light bulb went off. And so the next day I went down myself to that track. And I did 1.25 miles. The third day I did 1.5 miles. Then 2 miles. Then 3 miles. Then I was like Forrest Gump running through Wheeling, West Virginia. They say, there he goes. And about this time, I read about this new sport of triathlon, which is what my interest was, cross-training. It wasn't to do a triathlon. It was to cross-train. So I learned how to swim. I got a bike. And I started running, biking, and swimming to cross-train, not to do anything. But then I entered a half-mile swim, a 25-mile bike, and a 10K run. I finished that I felt like Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile. It was just this huge endorphin release of stimulus.
Joe,
I felt
just for my sake, how long ago, what year was that, or how long ago was
this
that?
was back in the mid '80s.
Feel better now?
Yeah.
The mid '80s. Yeah, there's hope. So then I started thinking, gee, what's happening? What am I doing by this exercise? I'm feeling better. I started losing weight as the unintended side effect of doing the right thing. And so when you look at it from a neuroscience viewpoint, what does exercise do to your brain and body? Well, it increases BDNF. Does anybody ever heard of BDNF?
No.
It's brain-derived neurotropic factor. This is a molecule in the brain that enhances neuronogenesis, which is the creation of new brain cells. As contrasted with cortisol, you make new brain cells, particularly again in the hippocampus that subserves memory. Synaptogenesis, you increase the synaptic connections wherein memory is encoded in your synapses. And brain plasticity is what each of you experience. You have a wealth of incredible amount of information and knowledge, and you're able to focus it like a laser beam when you talk to somebody about sales or this or that. It's the plasticity of your brain. And then what about the neurotransmitters? Most doctors think depression is a deficiency of Prozac or SSRIs. Huh? You get it?
Yeah.
You're depressed, take this pill.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a multi-billion-dollar business for SSRIs. But it's because the serotonin levels are low. Exercise enhances the serotonin. Acetylcholine enhances memory. Dopamine, the feel-good hormone. Norepinephrine, how to modulate stress. So all of these things happen when you run around that high school track or walk 2 to 3 miles a night after work. 30 minutes a day of exercise would reduce the incidence of diabetes by 40%, the most common cause of blindness, organ transplant, kidney transplantation, and amputation. How do we get people to walk 40 minutes a day? And this is Scientific American Mind, January, February this year. Regular physical exercise is better in lessening symptoms of depression compared head-to-head with antidepressant drugs. It's huge. It's huge. And I didn't know about this. And this is what I'm sharing in the book, my own story, but in telling what happens in the brain, what happens with neurotransmitters, what happens to elevate depressions, why it's so much better than drugs. So let's talk about the spiritual side of the square. So I mentioned the physical side, and in the book I touch each side. So the spiritual side of the square, when I was in that farmhouse in Dallas Pike, West Virginia, besides picking up I Dare You, I also picked up an old worn out Bible. I had 12 years of Sisters of Charity. My knuckles are still raw where they beat me up in Bel Air, Ohio. But I had a good foundation, Mass every day for 8 years, and altar boy, and very, very fundamentals. It's the most fastest thing to become atrophic when you get busy. You forget about it. And I lost the spiritual side of my square. And this is Father Ephraim. Father Ephraim, any Greek Orthodox people here? Father Ephraim is a head of the Greek Orthodox monasteries in the United States, and he came from Mount Athos. Mount Athos is a peninsula that juts out into the Aegean Sea in Thessaloniki, and is a home of monks and hermits going back to the 6th century. And he was in charge of 12 monasteries there, and came to this country calling by God to start missionaries in the United States. And somehow he ended up in Arizona, and he was driving from Tucson to Phoenix, and nothing but desert, tumbleweed, and he said, "Stop here." "Father, what do you want to stop here? It's desert." He said, "I want to build a church here." "Father, there's no water. This is desert. There's just tumbleweeds here." They bought 300 acres of desert, and he went to Phoenix, and he got a Greek Orthodox water driller. He said, "Drill here." This is a true story. They hit a river. They now have 5 churches in St. Anthony's in this monastery between Tucson and Phoenix. And if you ever have the opportunity to get there, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And Father Ephraim actually was a patient of mine, and I helped him out surgically, and he gave me this prayer robe that was handmade there in the monastery. And it's interesting, I describe all this in the book, but I wear this prayer robe every day I operate. And he's a very holy man. He's considered to be a living saint. And I feel, I really do, I feel his power. When things get difficult or rough, I really feel that his spirit is with me there. And the purpose of life, it is in giving that we shall receive. And I'm terrifically blessed to be able to share my experiences and what I can do with other people. And this is a patient of mine last week. It's a young nurse from works at Mercy Hospital. She gave me permission to use this. And the MRI is on the left that shows the massive herniated disc. The white is the spinal cord in the middle of that cross section. And that big thing to your right is a massive extruded disc fragment that's paralyzing her foot and also causing her bowel and bladder trouble. And I prayed with her, as I do with, I don't proselytize or force it, but you just get a feeling with people that, would you like to say a prayer? And if they do, I usually say, today is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And with your help, get Donna through surgery and back to her family and kids. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you how you see the stress level come down. Stress increases length of hospital stay, delays wound healing, and increases infection rate. So if you can say a 30-second, 1 minute, anything prayer to reduce the stress in somebody's life like that, right before they go into the operating room, it's very gratifying. And so the work side of the square, this is important. And stress is good. We all need stress. But there's EU means good, DIS means bad. There's good stress and bad stress. And you must be able to recognize where you are in that parabolic curve. You don't want to get into distress, at least for long. And there's a executive function overload, EFO. Your brain becomes overstimulated from continual crisis management. You really become able to think clearly. Your emotions get whipsawed, and you have what the Japanese call is karoshi. It's death from overwork. They literally work themselves to death sometimes for the company. And the relationship side of the square, and I go into other things on the work side in the book, but I'm giving you the capsule summary. And the relationship side, John Gottman is a PhD, I believe, neuropsychologist at the University of Washington, and he did an amazing study. He took couples who were all putatively happily married, and he put them into a life situation in a laboratory where he observed their behavior interacting over the course of a day or two. And by videoing these individuals and their reaction to each other, he could predict up to 80 to 90% of the time which ones would get divorced. And these were the principles that he would, if there's frequent criticism, if you're critical of your spouse, particularly and openly in public, defensiveness, if you feel contempt, school's out, stonewalling, all of these things, if practiced, aren't good for a relationship. This is the highway in Kona in the lava fields, and a brief story. I'm winding things up. I had finished. This was about 7 years ago. I'd finished the swim. I did the 112-mile bike, and I'm doing the marathon. And I have 10 miles to go before the completion of the race, and I'm dead. I'm becoming delirious. I'm shuffling. I can't walk. My legs are heavy. I want to quit, and I quit psychologically. Call the SAG wagon, call an ambulance, get me back to the medical kit. I need IVs. I'm not going to make it. And it was totally dark, and I heard behind me, click, 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 click. And the Doppler effect. It was getting closer. Click, 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 click. And a hand reaches out and touched me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, 227, you're too close to quit now. We got to finish. Come on, follow me." And I'm thinking, who is this character? He has no idea how I feel. I'm ready to fall down on my face. And he went ahead of me, and just then a car came in the opposite direction and shined its lights on this particular individual. And it was Rajesh Durbal. Rajesh Durbal was the first triple amputee to finish the Hawaiian Ironman National World Champion Triathlon. He had no legs, one arm, and this guy is telling me, "Come on, you can follow me."
Wow.
So I did. I said, "Oh my gosh, come on, help me, help me." And this is when I'm saying the Psalm 23. I'm repeating in my mind, "Today is the day, Lord, was made," and you know, help me, God, get me through this. I'm going through the valley of the shadow of death. And then this is where I talk about connecting the dots, how things happen in life. I had a wonderful conversation today with some of you individuals and David back there, how you meet people. I'm wondering, what am I doing going out to Whitaker Book Company? I don't know anything about, except what I briefly read, and sharing my story. And the traffic, there was an accident in the tunnel. I says, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. I'm not going to make it. I'm getting stressed." But it's amazing about connecting the dots in your life. And so about 3 years ago, Rajesh calls me on the phone and says, "Joe, I'm taking a group of differently enabled athletes to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And we need a doctor." And we all decided, "It's you." I said, "Rajesh, who's all?" He said, "Me." So I called my daughter, who was 18 in school at the Art Institute of Chicago. I said, "Bella, what do you think of this?" "Well, let's do it, Dad." So we went to Mount Kilimanjaro, and these differently enabled athletes, on the right-hand picture, the guy on the left has one leg. Rajesh, no legs, one arm. The guy next to him, one arm, no leg. And then the guy on the right side, bottom blue coat, is with no arms, driving he carried this wood shot, this club in his backpack. I couldn't figure out, why is he carrying this in his backpack to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro? He says, "My dream is to hit a golf ball off of the top of Mount Kilimanjaro." So he put a tee in the ground and drives the ball over the mountain.
Attaboy.
But it's this serendipity, the serendipitous way of things happen in all of our lives that really makes the difference. So a final thought, I love this quote: "Climb the mountain not to plant your flag, but to embrace the challenge, enjoy the air, and behold the view. Climb it so you can see the world, not so the world can see you." And Danforth's quote is just perfect. He says, "You don't want one, but 4 lives to live, a fourfold opportunity to grow. A body, a brain, a heart, a soul. These are our living tools. To use them is not a task. It is a golden opportunity to balance your life." And so that's, in 18 minutes, what the book's about, and a little overview in the background, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is part of your story in the book itself?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
What I did, I've kind of told this from the book.
Okay.
It's all in the book, everything I said. It's my story with medical information, like what happens when you exercise, what about stress, what happens in your brain with stress. And I also talk about epigenetics. 70% of the diseases we acquire are not genetic. 30% of the diseases we acquire are genetically based. The other 70% come from epigenetic factors. You know that the genes are on the chromosomes. If we laid out our genes, the genes are like a blueprint for our lives. They don't do anything until they're acted upon and told what to do. So how do you tell your genes what to do? You and I tell our genes what to do. So if we eat a Big Mac infused with hormones and antibiotics from a feedlot fed with corn, and a phosphoric acid Coke and trans fatty acids in our French fries, those molecules tell our genes to make inflammatory agents. What's the common cause of heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, arthritis, MS? Inflammation. If you eat a Mediterranean diet with polyphenols, a little bit of red wine now and then, you tell your genes to make anti-inflammatory agents. Anti-inflammatory agents reduce the inflammation and reduce the diseases of aging. So diet, exercise, the epigenetic factors for diet, exercise, whether you do it or not, environmental factors, smoking, drinking, water, air, and stress. Stress is a very, very, very dangerous phenomena in our brains and our bodies. It breaks our body down if prolonged and uncontrolled. Where do most of the centenarians live in this world? If you had to look at the blue zones, what are the blue zones? You're looking at Okinawa, Nicoya, and Costa Rica, Sardinia, Icarus, the island of Icarus, in Loma Linda, the Seventh-day Adventists. Why are these people the more centenarians than any other population? Number one, their diet is Mediterranean type, high vegetables, high fiber, lean meat. Number two, they work hard. Exercise, their exercise is hard work. So they're doing all the things that I got from running around a track. Their air is clean, their water is relatively pure, they don't smoke generally, and they have very strong family units. They're very spiritual for the most part. Religious, spiritual, strong family units, which reduces stress. You have somebody to lean on, somebody to fall back on. So that's the epigenetic factors that we describe in the book that lead to longevity. I dumped a lot on you guys today.
That's pretty awesome.
Really good.
Fascinating.
And it's all in the box.
And it's all in the box.
Tell us a little bit about Pythia Publishing.
It's a Pythia Publishing. That's a great question. The Temple of Apollo, the oracle of the Pythia were the individuals who the ancient Greeks would go to for their prophecies. And they were the individuals who would prophesize to the individuals going there, the good, the bad, and the indifferent that would happen to them. So I kind of picked that name, the oracle type thing, but that's all. There's nothing to it. This was I didn't tell the other part of the story. When in 1986, I was president of the Congress of Neurological Surgeons, which is the largest group of neurosurgeons in North America. And I had to give a presidential address. And the title of the address was From Icarus to Equanimitas. And you remember who Icarus was? Icarus was the mythological figure who was imprisoned on the island of Crete with his father Daedalus. And they were in this labyrinthine prison with the man-eating bull Minotaur. If they went the wrong way, they would die. Daedalus was a brilliant engineer, and he made wings of feathers and wax for his son and he. And he said, we're going to fly out of here, but I want to caution you. When you get into the sky and you're flying and soaring with the birds, do not soar too high, lest the sun melt your wings and you plummet into the sea, nor fly too low, lest your wings get pulled down by the water. It's the first balance story that I could find in mythology. And I've given many scientific talks on all sorts of medical issues, and no one remembers anything I've ever said scientifically. I still have people today come up to me and say, Joe, how's your square? I really love that talk. It really resonated with me. I'm honestly, I really mean that. Yesterday, a resident came up to me, somebody at Atlanta, the chairman of neurosurgery at Atlanta. I heard the talk. He said, tell Maroon, I'm still working on my square. So that was really the genesis for me. These people come back and say, I said, I'm going to put this down once and for all in a book for what it's worth, because it resonated so deeply with so many people. And it took me, I've been working on this for 10 years, thinking about it back and forth, and finally got the story together. And the people that have reviewed it have been, I've been very, very pleased with those who have read it and how they've been able to apply it to their own lives. On each side, the family, the spiritual, the work. It's a simple thing. You look at the square and you can see, like you said, you're a little stressed at what in your own mind, what you see. I'm not doing enough of this or enough of that. There's one slide I left off. It's a tachometer. And in your car you have the tachometer, and there's a red zone in the tachometer when you're overheating the engine. And every day when I get in my car, I literally look at my tachometer, and then I think, what's my stress level today? I want to stay out of the red zone, because I know if I stay in the red zone too long, I'm going to overheat and I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to make bad decisions. So I have to do something to counter that. Getting back finally to the insight part of this, people aren't aware of what's happening to them. The Buddhist approach, awareness, mindfulness, is so important. And the Christian, the same way. Meditation, the rosary, it's all in the same pathways in our brain.
How long has this been out? When did you publish it?
A week, 2 weeks ago.
And what are you doing? Like, are you for interviews? For what's sort of on your mind for PR and so on?
I gave. That's why I'm here. I don't know how to sell this book. I know the story well. I don't know I don't know what to do with it. I get great reviews. Sanjay Gupta, I asked him to put it on his website. Steelers, Greg Norman, the golfer, all these guys are either operated on them or helping in some way, and they've reviewed it. So I have good reviews, but I ordered a lot of books and have it on my own website, josephmaroon.com, and there's a website here, Maroon Square One. There's
Well
a
done.
trailer. Pardon me?
Your website's very well done.
Which one? The Square One?
Yeah.
Maroon Square One?
Maroon Square One I'm on right now.
Thank you. There's a nice trailer there.
Yeah, I didn't watch
Yeah,
that
but
yet,
it's, I mean, that's it. So this is nascent. I don't know. I've given talks. You know, I gave a talk to 200 salespeople in Florida a couple weeks ago for a big nutraceutical company. I'm talking to some Pitt students tonight. You know, I'm doing it because, again, it resonates with people. You know, I'd like to sell some books, but the main thing is to get it out. And how to do that, I have to defer to people like you. I don't know. I did publish one book prior called The Longevity Factor with Simon & Schuster. And it
Why did you not go with the traditional publisher on this book?
well, I wanted to do it in a square format. I wanted the pictures, and I wanted to do it the way I wanted to do it. I had a couple publishers who were going to do it, but, you know, this is probably the last book I'm going to write for a while. And I wanted to do it the way I wanted it. Now, if you have suggestions, hey, you should go to somebody else and let them pick it up and do something with it, I'm open to anything in terms of what to do with it.
This is a little different situation because we invited Dr. Joe in,
Right,
and he doesn't really have a relationship with us other than
Right.
just conversational.
right.
Do you have any questions of us about what we do, or?
Yeah, I mean, I can see, my goodness, you have a huge operation here. I tell people, I'm very impressed, and what can we do to work together? What can you do to help me, and how can I help you? I'm happy to give talks or, you know, book signings or.
Do you think you'll be doing television interviews and so forth
I would, you know, I was on WPXI,
beyond the local Pittsburgh
but
area?
I would. I mean, I'm amenable to that. Larry Richard, John Shumway had me on, and
Do you have a publicist, or?
not specifically. Again, it's all friendship. There's a group that is in primarily politics. John Brabender, Cox Publishing or Cox Advertising. They've sent flyers out to different news sources and things like that, but they're helping me. But it's kind of pro bono because we tit for tat. I help them with some things, but don't have a specific publicist. At this
You willing to hire one?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, I'd be willing to talk to
Yeah,
someone.
Jim, you should get him info on PTA, Planned Television Arts. They're in New York. They're very proficient for getting you on morning talk shows, which, you know, this is right up a Fox and Friends kind of alley. You know, if they gave you their typical 3 minutes, you'd reach so many people. And I could see that they would be open to something like that. PTA is a good group to do it. There are others, of course, but
Yeah, I still have a day job. But just like today, I talked to Jim and wanted to make the effort to come out and meet you folks, not having any idea where it's going, and be totally transparent. I have
way
no-
off topic. Do you know Ben Carson?
Yeah. Yeah, I know Ben, and he knows me.
I would imagine your field is, you know, it's very specialized, so you
It
probably
is.
all
It's-
know each other.
Well, it's small. It's about 3,200 neurosurgeons in the United States, so it's a small, relatively small club. The Neurosurgical Journal is doing a review of the book, but otherwise,
How many copies did you print, Joe?
I have some more in the car. I had just one box of 12,
How many
but I have
copies
some.
total did you print?
10,000.
10,000, okay. And, okay. You know, one of the things, if we're selling the book, we can give you access it just makes life a little easier when you're doing presentations that we can set you up with a phone app that when you're out speaking and you tell everyone pull your phone out and everyone thinks you're going to tell them to shut them off, but you say text, whatever the text number is, Joe to this number, and you can buy my book. So it gets your link back to your website, and that's one of the things we might be able to provide as you're speaking. That Joe, make life easier for you. You know, I don't know if you're carrying 75 copies now, but it helps you when you're talking. But that's one of the things we can do pretty quick for you and put that up. So we'll
I mean, talk it over, you know,
Alright.
see, whatever. I'm open to discussing, like Jim, would Jim, you be the contact person?
yeah. And is the book in Amazon now? Did you get it?
No,
Not available right
It's
now.
listed right now. I mean, the picture's up. It says currently unavailable.
All right.
No, I didn't go that route yet. I got 10,000 books I gotta sell.
Yeah.
It's all
Are they
right.
over in Bridgeport or are they here in Pittsburgh?
Bridgeport. And my daughter has an office over there, and it's something that she's doing, and they call in the 800 number or on the internet, and she mails them out
Okay.
just to
And,
do that.
and we wouldn't want to stop anything you're doing like that. So.
Yeah.
But okay. So.
Well, I appreciate your time, really. It's a great group,
We
and
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful, thank you.
okay, so, good. All right.
Jim, is that an extra book? Can I have that? I didn't get one.
I have,
Thanks.
you know, I have some more in the car.
Did everybody get a book?
I didn't. I'll run out with you. I
Okay,
bring a
you can
couple
bring it
in.
back.
You need your disc back though, right?
Yes, sir.
Flash drive.
Oh, yeah, my
Just
goodness.
want to take like a 5 or 10 minute break and then we'll get the guy with books in here.
Did he say how long he's been practicing?
Yeah.
If I just missed
Or
it.
eating fries, having a burger, and just one look at me. and he looks at you.
Long time.
Celeste came by here, they were looking for
It was pretty interesting.
like administrating
Oh, yeah, I just,
they get into
I'll be right
science
back.
and the brain and joy and how they're using your left brain, right brain, and